Okay, so here we have a leather arm guard that I have cut out and tooled, and I've got my pattern on here. It's this cool little cross hatch of interlocking pieces. And you'll note that currently part of it seems to be rather dark. You got these kind of dark brown bits, and the rest all seems to be relatively the same color. But what has in fact happened is I've taken this, which is a mix of acrylic resin and water, and I've brushed it on with a little paintbrush, specifically on all of the interlocking pieces that are connected to this guy. So this one, that one, and then the middle sections where it would be ostensibly going underneath as a resist. And this resist, it's acrylic resin is this great material that basically soaks into the top few layers of leather and sort of epoxies them. It's this kind of, it's not an adhesive, but it's like it's a sealant. It's this kind of plastic coating that you can use. If you use straight acrylic resin, you get this very glossy, very plasticky kind of look. Generally not what I'm going for, which is why I cut it with water and then do several layers. It removes that glossy, it looks like plastic feel and just really seals it really nicely. And so like these guys have all been hit with the acrylic resin. Or hang on, that one, and that one, and then this one, and this one, and as well as the outside edge, this kind of rim here. But then the others have not been, nor has any of the brown bits. And so the plan here is I'm going to take some gel antique. It's an EcoFlow product. It gives it kind of this tan look. It's this gel base. I mean, they also make a more liquid format, but I prefer the gel. I'm going to take an old sock here because they're getting kind of thin, and well, I didn't want to go out and buy rags, so I'm going to use this sock. So I'm going to put my hand in the sock here. I'm going to put the gel antique on here. I'm going to start rubbing it on. And what should happen is that the parts with the resist are going to be of this very, very light color. It's not going to soak into the leather and get through nearly as much. The parts that are not resisted are going to soak in that antique. And then the parts that are already dyed are also going to soak in some of that antique, and they'll get even darker. The gel antique, anything that's tooled or cut, right, that's compressing the leather or cutting through that top layer is going to soak up more of any dye or antique that you use. And a gel antique is really just like, I think it's basically a dye suspended in some kind of gel-like form. I don't actually know what it is, other than that it's like in a gel format. So like, here, I've already shaken this up, so I'm going to pour some of this into my hand. And you see, like, it's got this kind of like gel. You can see it moving around. It's not a liquid, it's definitely an actual gel. I'm going to take this guy, and we're just going to start applying it. And with this gel antique, you want it to be relatively evenly coated. And you don't want to leave it on for too long, because the longer you leave it, the more it's going to soak, the more intense it's going to get, and I found the more orange it tends to go. So I'm going to make sure this is squarely under the camera, and then I'm just going to start applying it, and you can kind of see the magic happen. Like, when I make minis, I call wash, like, you know, when I put a tone or a wash on the minis, I call it skill in a bottle. Gel antique and this technique of resisting isn't exactly skill in a bottle, but it's got kind of that same effect of, like, you do it and it changes the look of everything, right? So, like, this is how it looks now, and then we're going to see what happens. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to try and do this in a manner that doesn't shake things too much, but I know that the camera is also going to wiggle a little bit just because of the way that I have it secured, and that's okay. And at some point I may need to grab some more gel antique to fully cover everything. As I'm doing this, I'm trying to make sure that this gel gets in all the little cracks and cuts that I've made to really make those pop, right? I'm gonna grab a little bit more here, and already you can kind of see like the difference of these 3 different tones that I've been going for, right? So I'm gonna flip this here just to give myself a better surface to hold it on. But yeah, I'm trying to make sure with my fingers that I'm pressing it in to all of the cuts and all of the stampings from the tools to really just make those details pop. This is also a reason, and dye is the same way, that if you fuck up when you're doing leather and you accidentally scratch it or you cut it when you're not wanting to, and this will really be displayed in the bottom right corner of this where there were already imperfections in the leather, and with this piece I didn't start with a flawless leather piece. This is kind of an experiment for me in this armguard style, and so I wasn't too worried about having a perfect piece of leather and cutting into a new hide, so I just used a scrap that I had lying around. It's really going to make the imperfections in that leather stand out, and you'll see that too. So like here I'm using a little bit more pressure, and I'm really getting my fingers in there into all the little tooled bits. So anything that looks like it, it's just bare leather, I'm making sure that it's getting in there. And I might need to take a little bit more here for the more recessed parts because I have less on my hand right now. So like right up here, just need to make sure that I'm not having it hit too heavily. So I'm pushing it in, but I'm also like trying to take like the side of the sock here and also wipe away the excess because I don't want it to, darken too much. And as I'm like spot pressing in different parts. If that makes sense, as I'm kind of spotting. So I'm gonna just kind of grab this here and fold it in. So I have a nice little clean part, and I'm going to start to grab the excess, but also like gently buff it while I'm doing this. Because what's really cool about this antique is that when it dries and you like buff it with a soft cloth, it gets this just beautiful warm glow to it, this shine. I'm gonna push this up. I have this attached to the OT light on my desk right now instead of a separate standing anything. And so here, like right here, there's just the tiniest little bit, and I can see that it hasn't soaked up a gel antique in a cut that I've made. So there, I'm gonna just dig in there, make sure that it gets hit, and then return to buffing this out. All right. Oh god. Here we go. We're gonna get the bottom of this lamp in here to get a slightly better angle for it to stay. And definitely at some point, if I want to make recordings, I have a system that's attached to the wall instead, because this is not wanting to stay. Got my phone literally taped to the light of this lamp that's providing the light for this. And that's okay. But yeah, you can really sort of see the 3 different colors here, and it's more subtle between the resisted and the not resisted part, just because we also used a fair bit of antique, so it really has soaked in a lot, but that's okay. I mean, I kind of like the subtle blend of color palettes that I was going for here. I need a little bit more there, and so I'm just consistently going around here in this kind of corner with the part of the leather that was already kind of beat up, that had imperfections. I'm just making sure that the the antique is getting into all those little imperfections. And right now I'm just like grabbing excess, hitting it from all the different angles, picking up extra gel antique, and it's really buffing that out nicely as I'm doing this. The slight heat from the friction also helps to set it a little bit. I'm not pressing too hard. It's more about consistent motion and just repetition than it is about like pressing deep down into it, because the gel is also slightly wet, and I mean, anytime you wet leather and then press on it, you have the possibility of leaving imprints. So it's not really about force as much as it is about repetition and maybe speed, but really just repetition. But yeah, you can kind of see like it's getting this beautiful glow to it, kind of this, you see that, like that, this shine? Yeah, that's how that finish is going to remain. I'm really liking how this is turning out. And yeah, like that, the parts that were just tooled, like the background bits, they're nearly as dark as the parts that we hit with brown dye, right? I mean, it's not quite the same color, which is good. I didn't want it to be the exact same color. But it, like, that compressing of leather whenever you tool it, especially when it's a textured tooling, as well as any cuts you make with your swivel knife, like, it's just, those lines are popping now, which is very different compared to the earlier picture. I'm gonna grab a little bit more of clean sock here. Yeah, so I've started to just not throw away threadbare socks because they make such good little rags. I mean, it's like you can just throw them right on top of your hand, right? Like, it's almost like they're just made for this. It's perfect. And I like being able to work with my hands and not like have to use like a tool to do this. So just, you know, it's just nice. And see, also like on the sides, now that we've actually like hit this, I think what I might do, I might take the edger and go around the edge here to round it. I've been thinking about whether I want to do that before or after I actually glue the soft underside to this in case I need to round the underside. I'm not sure yet. I think I might do it after, and once I take the edger to the edges here to bevel those and make it rounded, then I'll take this again and I'll hit the sides because it'll soak that up real nice, and then I'll take a tool to I'll take a, I had this Cocobolo tool, and in the move it's packed away safe. It's in a safe place, but it's intended to be hooked up to my drill press. It spins, and I can get a really nice compacted edge on these. So I'll have to find that. Not that my drill press is in this town. Currently, my drill press is in Bloomington. It's one of the things I need to bring with me in the next load of stuff. It didn't quite make the trip this time. I'm looking here, and like right here, in this line of cuts right here, didn't quite get enough gel antique in there. So I'm gonna just real quick press it in there. And because it's a cut line, like, that underneath portion is going to soak up that gel antique right away. Like, right away. And then I can just take the excess and get rid of it right off the bat. So it's not going to darken too much in that area of parts that I don't want it to darken. Need to take my sock here and get it to back to a buffing portion instead of an antiquing portion. Spin it around on my hand. There we go. That's better. And we just keep going. And I'm probably doing this more than is strictly necessary, but I want to make sure that I don't have any extra just kind of setting in any places. Like right here, I want slightly more. And since there's still plenty on the sock, I'm just kind of squeezing it out, right? Make sure it gets in there, and then buff out the excess, and that's fine. I'm just going around looking at spots, anything that I think needs a little extra definition from this antique, and then buffing it out. Right, so it's, and I'll send you some before and after pictures, right? I'll take a picture of this when I'm done here, and just the difference is, to me at least, like magic. It's just flabbergasting. That's the new word that I'm using, flabbergasting. I'm sorry for the shakiness of this and the little noise of all like the tools and the bits of glass I have on this desk here. But yeah, and like it goes from having the wet gel antique on it and feeling like because it's wet, it's catching on the fabric, to just gliding underneath it as that top layer is drying and it's really buffing out. It gets to be just very slick and very smooth underneath the sock here. I'm just inspecting it now for any other places, like right here, this triangle in the middle, the bottom edge isn't as dark. The lines didn't pick up as much antique, so I'm gonna, there we go, squeeze a finger in there and drop some antique into those lines. And then that's wet again, so I gotta buff it back out to get that gloss back and really, you know, help that along with the drawing process. And I'm looking at the other parts. Up here, it's the same thing. So you really want to inspect it closely and make sure that you get that antique in all the recesses that you want. because you don't want to have to go back later when everything's already dry and risk accidentally, you know, putting too much antique on and having some parts look really orangey and really Oompa Loompa-y. Because I'm not generally a huge fan of that like super tanned look, that super orange look. There are some saddle makers that like their saddles are orange because they tan them real hard with the stuff that they use, and that's a look and that's cool, but it's not one that I'm a huge fan of. I like kind of these like just very warm but still natural browns as opposed to having a more just straight up orange. But yeah, that's looking pretty dang good right now. God, that's pretty. I like this. I'm just making sure that I'm also buffing all of the background parts, because all of the raised surfaces on that pebble background, they're going to pick up that same buff, that same gloss, and they're really going to just shine and pop as the light moves across this piece. I'm a big fan of that. Alright, so I think we can just let that dry before we need to do any more work with this. I'm going to take this sock, turn it inside out, and leave that inside part there to just dry and not affect anything else. We're going to close the antique bottle, and yeah, there we go. And that has now been antiqued. And we're going to let that dry, and I'll think about what the next step is going to be. So, yeah, thumbs up. It's pretty cool.